Sabrina has held a number of roles, and I would say received a bunch of recognition. Hold on, let me do that again. The top women in tech, one of the top women in technology. Do it again.
Wow, wow, I got that wow, wow. Anything that I want, I'ma get it now. Yeah, wow, wow.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Clickworthy Conversations. This is our third podcast. And today we want to welcome our very, very first podcast guest, the fabulous Sabrina DeVito, who's going to help us in our conversation today, which is AI in marketing. Your new best friend or scary job stealer. Now, both MD and I have worked with Sabrina for years at Best Egg, and I had an opportunity to work with Sabrina earlier in my career at Barclays. Sabrina has held a number of roles, and I would say received a bunch of recognition, most recently being named one of the top women in technology for 2024. So welcome, Sabrina, and could you tell us just a little bit about yourself?
Well, first off, thank you for having me. I am so honored to be your first guest. So that really means a lot. And as you mentioned, we've worked together in a number of capacities, but I am very excited to be here today because when this actually goes live, it will actually be the very beginning of my next chapter, which is undefined at this point. I have retired officially from Best Egg. And it has been a little bit of a gift because I have been able to completely immerse myself in what's going on in the AI world. So I'm excited to be here today to have this conversation with you.
Yeah, we're so excited. And I will say that most recently, Sabrina taught me how to build my own unique instance of a GPT, to which I've been nerding out on for like 2 weeks now, I think.
Very impressive. Very impressive.
All right. Well, let's jump in. So, I mean, there's so many things that we can talk about with AI. So for our audience, maybe we should just start. I don't want to say AI 101, but let's just talk about like the different forms of AI that exist out there today. I think one of the most common, particularly in marketing, is generative AI. And that is a little bit about how I think most people are using it, which is I type into ChatGPT, give me 5 subject lines for an airline credit card offer. And it will give me those subject lines, and then I can sort of review them and pick them out. Love to just take a little bit of time of like, where do we think generative AI is? What's been our experience with it? Do we think the marketers are using it? Or how many companies do we think are even using it today?
I can give you a starting perspective. First off, I feel like generative AI is moving at lightning pace, and it is like almost impossible to keep up with how quickly it is evolving out there. I think the 3 key players, probably the big leaders in the kind of general category would be, everybody knows OpenAI, Anthropic, who has Claude, and then Google that has its Gemini model. And while OpenAI was the leader and probably the first mover in the space, I think what has become clear is that Anthropic, as it relates to marketing, has probably built a model that is more oriented towards natural language processing and is better for marketing. So I hear and I use Claude in particular more frequently when it comes to marketing. So I'd be surprised if people aren't using it for some of the most basic things that you can use it for to help you with, just to make things faster and easier. So
agree. I mean, Google's really changed. The first thing that comes up, everyone Googles. I always say just Google it, right? I think that is just part of everyone's language today. If you don't know the answer, Google always knows, but the first answer that comes up right now is from Gemini. It's their generative AI. If you're asking a question, if you're doing something like that. So, I mean, you can't get away from it. Our daily habits have now evolved to include AI.
Well, and people that are in the search business are actually panicking that in the future you won't use Google, that you might turn directly to one of these models and just ask it to search the internet and to give you not just, what Google does, which is, sort of a rank order list and people who have purchased at the top of the list, but literally could actually help you do an evaluation and make the recommendation for the best thing. So that's an interesting space for sure to watch.
I definitely have started to cross that line, Sabrina, of exactly that, like not necessarily going right to Google, but opening up the ChatGPT app just because it's so easy and it's so accessible. For some reason, I never adapted the Google app, like to just search things. I would still use the web browser, whether it was on my phone or online, but I have the OpenAI ChatGPT app and I open it all the time. So I think it's definitely moving in that direction for sure.
Now that you can talk to ChatGPT, I literally get ready in the mornings and I have conversations with ChatGPT. And sometimes it's like, hey, I'm thinking about writing a piece today about XYZ. Like, help me think through like what's going on there and what are the relevant topics. Like, I am talking to it like it's a human being. It can quickly like consume your life for sure.
It's exciting, I think, and scary at the same time. So I think one of the other ways that AI is used today, which I will say is somewhat the bane of my existence, but I do think it's evolving, it's getting better, but chatbots, right? And this idea, like you just said, conversational AI, chatbots used to be, if you asked a question, it would give you a canned answer. And if you stumped the AI, it would just kind of take you in this weird loop, which I think frustrated a lot of people. It was almost like a chat version of a really ineffective IVR.
Absolutely. That's definitely taking a lot of good steps forward for sure. A little bit to your point, Maureen, of it's scary is when you want to use conversational AI to support your business, you can't have AI going completely rogue on you. So like there's a little bit of like making sure it has the right knowledge base to be able to answer questions and the right constraints, but also the ability to do what it does best, which is to also be able to triangulate into answers that might not have been specifically scripted for it.
I think that's a great perspective on how the bot has evolved, from that like scripted default answer to something that's more of actually what you are looking for and what you're seeking out. Because I think businesses and brands now are expected to have the answers and almost proactively solve the problem before the customer even gets to it. So I think it's definitely evolved in that sense.
I think one of the things that definitely, at least in our last year that we were there at Best Egg, was the topic of many conversations, was this whole idea of like machine learning and predictive AI, right? Like Netflix is able to curate content for you very, very easily based on previous shows you watch. So you log on to my Netflix, it's different than my husband's Netflix, probably different than Sabrina's Netflix, assuming you have Netflix. But that type of like machine learning that I think is also, everyone is figuring out, how can I use this to advance my business?
I mean, I feel like 5 years ago, machine learning was the cutting edge AI. And now that machine learning almost feels a little simplistic in comparison to what we're dealing with generative AI, which is has the ability to use these large language models and be more predictive. I don't profess at all to be a data scientist and understand the actual underpinnings, but it does feel like there'll always be a place for machine learning. But my sense is that the generative piece of it is actually stepping it forward in a new and different way.
Yeah. I think one of the things that is important is whether it's the generative or even just using machine learning, right? It's the quality of the underlying data and how you're sort of reading, consumer behavior, and then having your models sort of interpret that. I mean, it's so important, I think, to make sure you've got a good data layer. Otherwise, you're not really going to be able to capitalize on AI.
That is very, very true. And I think what you see happening with the latest versions of models. So now not only do you have, OpenAI, but OpenAI probably has 8 different models that kind of sit underneath it. And each is tuned to do different things. And it will use data, go out and collect data and use it. Ideally, the real benefit for marketers, though, will be to feed it their own proprietary data to have it help in doing analysis and uncover insights that you might not have seen previously. I'm really excited about that as it relates to consumer research, by the way. You can today create your own knowledge base of all your feedback from your consumers, whether it's through surveys, whether it's through transcripts from focus groups, whether it's from reviews that they have left for you. And you can almost create your own persona that just imagine feeding all that data into a knowledge base and then using ChatGPT to ask it questions as it relates to how it might respond to your marketing or how you might position something to it, what its preference might be. And it can use that data source as a proxy for your customer to give you feedback. That's super exciting stuff.
It's so interesting that you say that, because we talked in another podcast just about the marketing plan and how important research on your audience is. But, there are a lot of folks who say, particularly when you do qualitative research, right, in a focus group or something like that, you do tend to see groupthink. AI kind of takes that element out of it if you're actually looking at customer feedback and the things that they're saying they like, that they don't like, all of those things. It can really help you with understanding your audience at a deeper level and potentially even going so far into what's the right way to segment.
I think it also helps to define product roadmaps and feature enhancements as well. When you start to see those frequent pain points, I remember we had it in Slack, just what are the customer feedback, the latest and greatest. But I think being able to tap into it and see what are the most frequent problems within our experience, how can we address those to just really then focus on those bigger moments where we can differentiate or set ourselves apart, I think is a huge unlock to be able to do much more efficiently.
I mean, we had an entire tech stack dedicated to the voice of customer and analysts who were dedicated to actually culling through a lot of that data to try to bring the insights forward. But I think this kind of puts it at the fingertips of any user. If you can organize your knowledge base such that it can interact with a generative model, then, you can start to ask it questions. And one of them can be what are the biggest pain points you're hearing our consumers talk about recently? And then you could say, what might be some solutions that you suggest that we might consider to overcome those things? How might you describe them? What might be a good headline? I mean, you could just keep going.
Give me a project roadmap to implement it.
Yeah, exactly. Give me a project roadmap to implement it. You're exactly right. And to that point, I feel like AI is this black hole for that exact reason, because you can just start with one topic and then before you know it, you can just keep asking deeper and deeper questions and, get more and more things out of it.
Yeah. So one more is a little bit more on AI automation, right? And so this is just AI powered tools that are real time, sort of reading what's happening and then adapting. I think this is email optimization time send, right? So, almost on a one-to-one customer basis, when's the best time for me to send an acquisition email to somebody who sits on the East Coast? And it sort of takes this data and it figures out that send time. I think a lot of people are using that.
And I think the next level of that is really what everybody is talking about right now, which is agentic AI, which is essentially creating these agents who are created to actually do various marketing tasks for you. And it's not limited to marketing. It can be beyond marketing. But, the idea that you can set them up to, on a very regular basis, for example, pull down your Google Analytics, review the results that you see, make recommendations for what our next campaign might look like. And and it's an agent that has been directed to do that on a regular basis is a perfect example. I think it started with like, hey, let's use some AI logic to help optimize how we automate things. But now you're really talking about creating, and mostly today, like smaller agents that can do a bunch of different tasks that really help you either execute or, optimize processes and even like data and analytics.
Michaela actually has some experience with Google PMax. You want to talk a little bit about that? Because I think that's a good use case here for AI automation.
I think that was a new channel and a new tactic for us when we were working through it. And I think it was just kind of compiling a campaign of creative video, stills, headlines that Google would kind of utilize AI and the different channels that lived within the Google ecosystem to push it out to those customers that they think would convert. And ultimately, we proved out to see that it was the first tactic that ever outdid branded search. So it was much more efficient in terms of cost per funded loan. And I think that that was a huge unlock to understand, like, okay, this targeted specifically to people that we know it's going to resonate with based off of all of the data that Google is using to kind of run these campaigns really showed us some optimizations in our campaigns. But I think also what resonated with our customers as well and potential leads. So I think that was an interesting unlock for us.
To Sabrina's point earlier, which was something I hadn't thought of, was this idea of AI replacing, search engines. And so when you think about something like that, your branded search terms historically have been your most cost effective because somebody is searching for, Maureen Connors, I come right up. But now, if you're able to sort of personalize and reach them at the right time, it really unlocks a lot of things. And that could be really cool. I'm better at reading video. Somebody else could be better at a static image. Are you ladies up for a little game? I have prepared an AI versus human showdown. We'll do 3 rounds and I'll read 2 pieces of copy and then need you guys to tell me which one is AI and which one you think is human and maybe a little bit on why. And I think we'll see some trends emerge. You guys up for it?
Sure. That sounds like
Do
fun.
it.
All right. Scenario 1 is a meal delivery service. Option A, dinner, simplified, fresh, chef-crafted meals delivered to your door. No prep. No stress, just really good food made easy. Option B, experience gourmet dining at home with our expertly curated meal plans, fresh ingredients, balanced nutrition, and chef-inspired recipes delivered to your doorstep for ultimate convenience. Who wants to go first and guess?
Michaela, do you want to go first?
We're answering which one we think is AI.
The second one was AI.
Really? I thought the first one was AI.
Why'd you think the second one, Michaela and Sabrina? Why'd you think the first one?
I thought the second one because it used a lot of buzzwords. It was pretty fancy. Whereas in the first one spoke to the more human qualities and why someone would be getting meals at home potentially. So it kind of resonated and it hit the like, I get you. Also, it sounds like a nice service for me personally. So I was just like, okay, less stress, very easy, good meals at home. I'm here for it.
I thought the first one, but it depends on the prompt you use because the second one was almost like a very conversational way of describing it versus the first one to me felt like it was a little bit more optimized for punchiness and marketing. And so that's why I thought the first one. But you could have told ChatGPT to write it in a certain style and it would have showed up as the second one.
So it's very interesting because these get harder. So this one I just put in straight. Give me 2 subject lines, marketing copy, one written by AI and one written by human. So Michaela's right. When you give that prompt and you don't put in anything else, AI will default to the more buzzwords, expertly curated, chef-inspired, where the human copy felt more conversational. Now, had you given AI the prompt to make it more conversational, I think it gets a little bit harder. All right, so let's go to scenario 2, which is a subscription-based fitness app. The third one has the more human prompt. This one is sort of same. Option A, optimize your fitness journey with AI-powered workout plans. personalized training routines, real-time progress tracking, and intelligent recommendations to help you achieve peak performance. Option B, your workouts your way. Get expert-designed fitness plans that adapt to your progress, fit your schedule, and keep you motivated. Because movement should feel good, not forced.
If it was the same prompt, and I'm going to assume that it kind of followed the same format as the first one, then I would say the first one is written by AI and the second one is written by a human.
Okay, Michaela, do you agree?
I was gonna say the same thing. I definitely think the more wordiness, if it was the same prompt, made me think that.
Yeah. Okay, great. You guys are right. I mean, it was wordy. It does feel less human, which I think, to the point that we made earlier, you do have to have that conversation with AI to make sure it's coming across with your brand voice. If your brand voice is playful, if your brand voice is casual, if your brand voice is professional and a little bit about your audience, I think then the AI can tailor, which makes it harder to tell. So in the third one, I did ask them, I fine-tuned this response to say, sound more human. And it is a sustainable clothing brand. So option 1, style that looks good and does good. Our sustainably made fabrics are soft, breathable, and designed to last, because fashion should be as kind to the planet as it is to you. Option B, elevate your wardrobe with ethically sourced, eco-friendly apparel, thoughtfully designed for comfort, durability, and sustainability. Our collections help you make a statement while also making a difference.
Ooh.
Makes it a little bit harder, right?
Yeah. Michaela, did you have a
I want to
thought?
say the first one was AI.
Okay.
It was hard. It was much harder than the first two. Not as easy to tell for sure. But Sabrina, what did you think?
I actually thought it was the second one. So, but
Interesting.
they were
Okay.
much closer.
So Sabrina is right. It was the second one was AI generated. And in here, though it's human, AI still defaulted to more what they said polished language, which I think is sort of interesting when you think about it. Writing messaging for your organization is, if you don't want big words, used in your marketing, like ethically sourced, like, does your audience know the term ethically sourced, or do you want to have it to be more simple, transparent, plain language? I think to get it even closer, you would give a prompt to say, rewrite this statement using plain language, and it probably would be even more similar.
Yeah. I mean, don't forget that one of the things that you can do as marketers is you can set up a custom GPT that would have your brand guidelines, your communication guidelines, your persona in it. You can set it up so that anytime it generates a piece of content for you, you've given it the knowledge to actually write the way you would want it to write. So you don't actually have to prompt it every single time. You may still find that depending on the channel that you're using or the type of campaign that you might want it a little bit differently. But don't forget, this will be really interesting because you can set it up with all those parameters happening in the background for you.
Yeah, which is really cool because you could also get that over to your agencies, right? Hey, here's our GPT instance for you to sort of use as you're writing the copy to make sure you're nailing our tone of voice. And we don't necessarily have to go through onboarding a new agency, all of the sort of onboarding of your brand. I mean, you still need to walk them through your brand guidelines so they understand, but it could actually make it a lot easier. You could probably even have the do a brand guidelines walkthrough for your agencies. Really, the possibilities are endless.
I agree. If you get some marketing from your agency, you can also have your GPT go through it and score it against your brand guidelines or your persona and help you to point out places where there might be more opportunities.
Yeah, which is awesome. That's actually one I've never even thought of, which I think is a great transition, right? I think we can all say AI is here to stay. So what do we think the future is going to be for AI? Anything what about for personalization? What do we think AI is going to do for personalization?
I would say that it's going to continue to evolve. And I think to what you kind of alluded to in the beginning, Sabrina, of you now having this conversation with AI, they're going to expect these, I would say, either chatbots or recommendations or experiences to really be tailored to them, almost giving them the answers to their questions before they ask them. And I would say for brands and businesses and marketing teams, we're able to go from blank slate to something much quicker with all of this information that we could feed a GPT, with the tasks that it can help us make more efficient. I think there's something to embrace versus to run away from, be afraid it's going to take your job. If we truly lean into it, it really creates the opportunity for us to focus on the moments that matter and those big things.
I know we've been trying to get there for a long time, but imagine a database that literally, if you are a customer, understands every single touch point you've ever had with that company, and then having the tools to be able to intelligently digest all of that. Not an analyst kind of like going through and doing analysis on it, but literally an AI that can go through it and make some decisions that say, like, the next time you touch this person, here's what you should touch them with. Here's what you should reference based on what was most relevant to them. Like, I do think it has, I haven't really heard of a lot of use cases specifically being built around that, but like I can imagine we could really get to one-to-one marketing. Like that's a buzz term from 10 years ago.
Oh yeah.
You could legitimately get there.
And you know what, Sabrina, that's where my mind kind of went, is it takes all of your interaction, and even if I'm talking about an email, right, from subject line to intro to body copy to sign off to images that you're shown, right? Basically a one-to-one email. The other thing I thought of was the poor legal and compliance teams, particularly the financial industry, that would have to try to review all of that content. Like I couldn't even imagine. It would be so interesting to understand. Like it's just another industry that's going to have to evolve. Like as AI is generating this content, like how are you making sure your checks and balances are in there for things like, you know, UDAP, unfair and deceptive abusive practices, right? You got to make sure AI is not taking steps that you wouldn't take or that your legal and compliance wouldn't approve. It's definitely going to be a challenge that in the not too distant future we're going to face, because you're not going to be able to review thousands upon thousands of unique emails.
But I think that's kind of how the balance comes in between AI and humanity. Like you still need that human aspect. At the same time, it can almost run on autopilot. It's like those cars. I'm afraid to put the car on, you know, automatic drive, but it can do it. So I think it's having that balance and striking the right balance between those things is super important now.
One of the other things I think that's interesting for the future that I would love, you know, any input, but you know, AI is out there gathering data. Rather than have somebody sitting there on your social media, on anything else, AI could be, you know, almost coming up on emerging trends in TikTok and things like that. And then notify your brand, right? Of like, hey, this is an emerging trend that's coming out. Like, do you want to join this conversation? And so you're able to, I think, capitalize on those emerging trends a little bit earlier than you could with human who's putting together a deck, you know, here's the trends. So I just think that's another interesting AI use case that will really just see like trends coming out faster and brands responding to trends a lot faster.
So if you haven't seen it, OpenAI has a new model that's in beta that's called Tasks, and Tasks will do exactly that. You could give it a task to track the trends related to whatever, you know, I want to talk about digital marketing trends and understand, and it will, on whatever frequency you define for it, go out and collect that information for you to see. Now, it doesn't necessarily connect you right into the conversation, but I think that's next.
Yeah.
The piece that is missing right now is all the connectivity that needs to happen. Like you still need a little bit of engineering to make sure that these models are actually connected. But the pace it is moving, Maureen, I feel like we're moving like a decade in a year here. They're just evolving so quickly.
It's really funny. I saw a presenter early on in my career who talked about, you know, the adoption of radio, the adoption of TV, right? And then from smartphones, like the technology adoption, like the curve is just becoming steeper and steeper. And I think AI is even steeper than smartphones, the internet, everything else. To your point, it feels like there's a new use case, a new something almost every single day. It's really hard to keep up.
Totally, 100%. I mean, it is exciting and terrifying all at the same time.
We definitely don't want, what's the book is 1984, Hal, right?
Yeah.
Definitely don't want AI taking over the world, but it can make our jobs a lot easier. All right. So, Sabrina, when we have a guest, you're our first guest, so it's our first pilot, but we like to give our guests a hot seat question.
Okay.
And so the hot seat question for you is going to be, would you trust AI to run your entire marketing strategy? Or do you think human creativity still has an edge? And the one twist I'd like you to think about, now and in the future, if you think about 5, 10 years from now, do you think human creativity still has an edge?
I think human creativity is going to be more important than ever, because what I already see happening is, these large language models are using all of the same information. It's a lot of information, but I can just quickly see that, the ability to copy and to reuse what everybody else is doing is going to become easier and easier. And so the question is like, how are you going to stand out? And you can use the AI tools still to help you, but I think you need the human creativity to actually be able to stand out from the pack.
I think that's right.
And I think like branding as an example, just as a side note, one of the things I'm working on has a new logo, and I asked ChatGPT to go out and to look across the entire website to see if anybody had a logo that resembled the logo that had been designed. And the response was terrible. It was just terrible. Came back with like 10 companies. Their logo looked nothing like the logo. So like there are still places where, it hasn't quite reached peak efficiency.
I agree. We used it. We were playing around with the image generator and saying like, oh, make this person have brown hair, and then made both people have brown hair, And so I think that there's a lot of work that could be done in just generating image and, responding and understanding those commands. Like there's definitely more to do on that side for sure.
Image, I think, is the most frustrating one of all of them, to be honest. Unless you want like a cartoon character, it still needs to come a long way. But there is this company called Visual Electric that I think is worth checking out, because I think they're actually making some pretty good strides there. But yeah, image, definitely a challenge. Just to kind of put a bow on this, I think we will always need human creativity. I think humans will always have more context and more understanding of the nuances than the machine ever will. And those types of things will become even more important. The other thing I've been thinking a lot about is I think there's going to be more need for human interaction in the future than in the past. I do believe that you're going to be able to work more with your AI to do a lot of tasks, but what you need is to go out and to engage with other human beings, and that engagement sparks some of the creativity that helps you to understand the nuances, gives you relational connections that there's no way you can have with the AI. We are going to actually lean into more and more is human interviews and conversations that we then use the actual, transcript from those things to actually then create marketing and content from it. The wonderful thing is we as humans can go out and have those conversations, and the AI can then help us to identify what were the themes, what might be interesting, how might you transcribe that into a blog, into a post. That's where it can be your assistant. But I think you still need to be the one having those human interactions and helping to create what is the content, what is different that we talk about.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think just to summarize here, what we've learned is AI is here. It's not going away. It's going to make marketing faster. It's going to make it smarter. And it's really going to be 100% data driven. Your marketing is only going to be good as the data that you capture on your customers. So it's going to become more and more important for companies to make sure they've got a good underlying data structure. I think we said AI is going to handle a lot of the time-consuming, repetitive tasks that marketers have today, freeing them up to focus on strategy, creativity, and storytelling. I think the risk here we didn't necessarily talk about, but that comes to mind, I know we've talked about before, is, those entry-level marketing jobs. One thing we're going to have to figure out is, you can't just jump into marketing strategy. So for people coming up in the industry in the age of AI, how are they learning how to generate that strategy and how to do that if they've not spent time in sort of those time-consuming, almost like repetitive tasks? And I think finally, like the very best brands, they're not just going to use AI, they're going to blend it with human creativity to really make those breakthrough marketing campaigns. I think that's going to be so, so important. So thanks for tuning in, and a super, very, 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 very special thank you to Sabrina for agreeing to be our very first guest and for the awesome conversation. And obviously, good luck in your next chapter. We're super excited for you. We'd love to have you on in the future and hear what you're up to. For our listeners, please remember to visit us at marketingperspective.com to submit your marketing challenges and questions that you want us to discuss. And then subscribe to our channel on YouTube or Spotify or wherever you listen to podcasts. And we'll see you next week for another episode.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Wow, wow, I got that wow, wow.